Dr. Dunn? Mr. Obernolte?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Chu, I'd like to continue our discussion of Project Texas, if we could. Part of Project Texas is that engineers at Oracle will review the algorithms used by TikTok to confirm that they're free of foreign influence. I have a question about that because we're talking about AI, that's a very generic term. Do you use machine learning to influence the algorithms at TikTok?
This gets very technical, and we have published several blogs about this, which I can forward to your team.
Okay.
But yes, it's mainly based on interest signals.
Right, okay, so here's my question. How could looking at the algorithm confirm that it's free from foreign influence? Because the algorithm is just a neural net architecture with inputs and outputs and weights, and how to train that. I mean, the influence is an external factor. So I'd appreciate it if you could give us, I see we're out of time again, a written answer to that. But again, I'm concerned that what you're proposing with Project Texas just doesn't have the technical capability of providing us the assurances that we need. I yield back, Madam Chair.
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes Ms. Custer. Ms. Custer is not here. Ms. Barragan for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Chu, TikTok warns users when content is graphic or disturbing and labels state-affiliated media accounts to ensure the viewers aren't seeing propaganda. Does TikTok provide similar information to Spanish speakers, users, as well as English speakers?
I believe so, Congressman. I will get back to you on that.
Okay, and do you know if TikTok has a specific strategy for tackling Spanish language content that violates its trust and safety guidelines?
We do. I will get back to you on the specifics on that.
Okay. When offensive English language search terms or hashtags are blocked for violating community guidelines in English, is the Spanish translation of the term or the hashtag automatically blocked as well?
I believe so, but let me check the specifics and get back to you.
Do you have any idea how many people that you might have working at TikTok that addresses Spanish misinformation?
I know ballpark it's quite a significant team, but I can get back to you on the details.
You said significant, so are you saying it's, do you have a ballpark at all you can give us? Would you say it's like 10% of your force or more
It's
than?
an important number, so I want to be precise, and I'll get back to you.
Okay, do you happen to know how if a TikTok can effectively ensure that Spanish-speaking users between the ages of 13 and 17 are not being targeted by ads promoting harmful content?
We have very strict policies for our users who are in the teenage age group, and regardless of what language they speak. So we want to make sure that they are given a very safe experience on our platform, regardless of the language they
Well, I know, I'm
use
just
it.
trying to figure, I'm trying to ascertain resources you may be putting into Spanish speaking and Spanish language. Last year, the Congressional Hispanic Caucus met with TikTok. This was one of the conversations, and a source of the discussion was addressing Spanish language disinformation and misinformation. It remains an urgent priority for the Congressional Hispanic Caucus as Hispanics across the country increasingly turn to social media for vital information. We heard earlier in this hearing that there was, video, there was a TikTok post threatening the chair of the committee, and it took some 40 days to take it down. So I guess I'm a little concerned if your team doesn't have the resources and the capability to flag that, what kind of capability is it going to have to bring down misinformation, disinformation to Spanish speakers, which I'm assuming is a smaller fraction of the workers that you have at TikTok?
TikTok is a place for all our users to come and express their very diverse views, and we are open to all ethnicities, and we are open to all everyone to come here and freely express their views. So it is our commitment to make sure that the safety of those users, regardless of the language, and of course, the Spanish language user base is super important to us.
Okay,
we
so
need to make sure that we continue to invest
Okay, so
in
you don't have an answer then. Okay, I will look forward in your coming back. We've heard a lot about the concerns about children who may be on TikTok. Mr. Chu, at what age do you think it would be appropriate for a young person to get on TikTok?
We have 3 different experiences here in the United States. There is an experience for under 13s, which is highly restricted.
I'm asking what you think would be the appropriate age to have a child get on TikTok.
Our approach is to give differentiated experiences for different age groups and let the parents have these conversations with their children to decide what's best for their family.
So you think that there is a sufficient safety mechanism for an 8-year-old to be able to access TikTok?
An 8-year-old's experience on TikTok will be so highly restricted that every single piece of content he or she will see will be vetted by Common Sense, our third-party child safety expert, and the 8-year-old will not be able to post, and the 8-year-old will not be able to see any personalized feed and 0 advertising in that experience. So I believe, yes, it is the appropriate experience for an 8-year-old.
Well, then why don't you let your 8-year-old child on TikTok?
I have seen these news articles. I would like to address that. My kids live in Singapore, and in Singapore, we do not have the under 13 experience. If they lived here in the United States, I'll let them use the under 13 experience.
Okay, so you're saying it's because of the country you live in doesn't have the same mechanisms. Is there a reason you don't have those same mechanisms everywhere?
In principle, we want to provide, a good experience for our users in general. We don't want to monetize from people who are under 13. In the US, we are COPPA compliant, and as part of that, we were deemed as I want to get these specifics right. We were deemed as a particular type of audience, mixed audience app. I want to make sure that that's right. And as a result of that, we have to provide an experience to our under 13 users in this country as well.
My time has expired. Thank you. I yield back.
He yields back. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Utah, Mr. Curtis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Chu, my children are getting ready to run a marathon, and I noted during this hearing that they'll be running for about the same amount of time that you'll be sitting in that chair today. Unfortunately, I only get you for 5 minutes, so instead of a marathon, I'd like to do a sprint with you. And I want to go back up to that 30,000 feet level. Would you agree with me that Section 230 was created to protect platforms like yours from lawsuits when you distribute information? Don't overcomplicate it, just like 30,000 feet. Yeah. So then would you agree that there's a line drawn between publishers of information and distributors of information, specifically in the Section 230 language?
I think 230 is a very complex topic.
I understand, but remember, we're at 30,000 feet. So in short, your platform distributes content that other people's publish. One of the early challengers to Section 230 was when AOL refused to take down a post of somebody that had inappropriately put associated a phone number with the Oklahoma City bombings. The courts ruled that AOL was not liable for that post because of Section 230. Now, I want you to do a hypothetical with me because I'm going to use the absurd to try to make a point here. Let's suppose hypothetically that AOL, instead of just posting that, actually wanted to magnify that voice, and so they took out an ad in the Wall Street Journal linking that phone number with the Oklahoma City bombing. And let's suppose they didn't stop there, but they went further, and they took out a Super Bowl ad linking that phone number with the Oklahoma City bombing. And let's suppose, hypothetically, they didn't stop there. They sent a flyer to every home in America linking that phone number to the bombing. And I guess the question is, would AOL have moved from a distributor to a publisher in this made-up example?
Congressman, I think respectfully,
I think everybody can see that they would. This is not a hard question. Moving that far away from the intent would have moved them to a publisher. So my question is platforms are protected because they post content, but I want this room to see, not just you, the protection has limits. And if AOL moves to a distributor instead of a publisher, they go outside of those limits. Now let's talk algorithms just super quickly. We've thrown that word around a lot today. Let me here again go 30,000 feet, and we'll use another platform so it's not sensitive. But Pinterest, I like to go on Pinterest. My wife and I are building a home, working on the yard right now. If you went on my Pinterest page, you would see swing sets and things made for my grandkids. Now, another hypothetical, let's suppose that there's some devious intent inside Pinterest, and they decide they want to influence John Curtis with these algorithms, and they want me to believe it's the end of the world. And all of a sudden now I'm buying bomb shelters instead of swing sets for my kids. Have they become a publisher and should not be protected from Section 230? And if you don't feel, I'm pretty sure the room understands that they have crossed this line, and you can tell me if you think they have or not.
Congressman, I will have to study that specific example and get back to you.
It's a hypothetical, but you can see at some point they've crossed the line and they have become a publisher and a distributor. So we've touched on this today, but I want to be super specific. Is it possible that TikTok had enough data, could get enough data on me, that you could use artificial intelligence and your algorithms and machine learning to write an algorithm that could persuade me to change how I view a policy issue? Does that possibility exist?
The way we look at it,
30,000 feet, run a sprint.
I will stay very high level. The way we look at it is our users come in and express whatever views they want.
But that's not the point. The point is you could write an algorithm that would change. And we've actually seen, the Washington Post reported the Stop the Willow campaign shows how TikTokers are tackling climate change. I think that's all fine, right, and all good, unless somebody has interjected into that and magnified or diminished voices in that. And what I'm proposing to you today is that pushes them across the line from a distributor to a publisher if they make those decisions. Now, serious allegations have been made against your platform and others, many of them here today, and you're not new to these allegations. This isn't your platform, but some time ago there was an allegation that a platform recommended ISIS-related videos. We've talked about the weight loss videos. We didn't talk about it, but the stealing the elections. Whatever the motivation, I'm trying to point out that as you move from a publisher, as you manipulate this data with algorithms, that you step out from the protections of Section 230. Do you see that logic?
This is a very complex
I understand it's very complex, but you see the logic. In your mind, has TikTok ever stepped across the line from a distributor to a publisher?
Congressman, again, this is a very complex topic. I will need to get back to you on this.
I understand that. Okay, and finally, very quickly, you produced a video that now is well known about your visit here and today in Washington, D.C. Can you tell me 100% that no TikTok employees manually manipulated that to get more views?
I checked, and as far as I know, there was no boosting and heating. I went viral organically.
Okay, Madam Chair, I'm sorry I'm out of time. I yield my time.
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes Ms. Blunt Rochester. 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Chu, as I'm sure you know, this hearing is part of an ongoing effort by our committee to examine data security and other concerns with social media companies broadly. And I have to tell you, I came to this hearing interested to hear the actions that TikTok is taking to combat misinformation, protect our young people, and ensure our national security. But I've not been reassured by anything you've said so far. And I think, quite frankly, your testimony has raised more questions for me than answers. As some of my colleagues already noted, platforms like TikTok can easily manipulate and undermine user autonomy with addictive features, invasive data collection practices, and disseminating misinformation and disinformation. That's why I will be reintroducing the Detour Act to mitigate this harm. Mr. Chu, yes or no, would you oppose legislation that banned the use of intentionally manipulative design techniques that trick users into giving up their personal information?
In principle,
it's just a yes or no.
In principle, I agree that that kind of practices is not.
And can TikTok users opt out of targeted ads? Yes or no?
At this moment in time, we believe that this is a very important part of the experience.
Yes or no? Time is ticking.
It is an important part of the experience.
Even if someone wants targeted ads, do you give a user a clear opportunity to prevent TikTok from using tools like pixels to collect their data and track them off of the TikTok platform?
We give our users a lot of tools to control their privacy settings on our app. And by the way, if you're below 16, it's private by default. So you cannot even go viral.
In August of 2022, response to a letter I wrote to your company on abortion misinformation, TikTok asserted several actions to address abortion misinformation. In light of recent attacks on safe and effective medication abortion, I'm remained worried by this misinformation. And following on Ms. DeGette's questioning, how many posts did you actually take down that contained abortion misinformation?
Contents on views on both sides of the on abortion is allowed on our platform. It's just freedom of expression. If it's dangerous misinformation, we rely on third-party experts to help us identify and remove them. I can get back to you on specifics.
Yes, please get back with us on the specifics. Mr. Chu, in your testimony, you indicated TikTok has taken several steps to implement Project Texas. You've said you've spent, in your testimony, $1.5 billion. You've hired 1,500 full-time employees. Can I ask for some specifics about the implementation? This $1.5 billion, what was it used for? The employees, were they people that you already had that you just transferred over? And what types of roles will they have?
Oh, okay. This $1.5 billion is spread across many things, including the infrastructure we have to build, the migration of the data to a new cloud infrastructure, and all the third-party security partners that we're hiring, and of course the new employees. Now, this team will now be run by a gentleman who used to be who has spent his career as a chief security officer in other companies, and another gentleman who used to work, I believe, in
if you could just follow up with us, that would be very helpful.
I will.
Because we would really like to understand the details. Where's the money going? How many people are, and what will they be doing?
Okay.
As I put just kind of a finer point on this, one of my concerns is that we came here hoping to hear some actions that would alleviate some of our concerns and our fears. We got family members. We have a lot of folks here that are constituents, that are content creators. And for us, we were looking for action. We wanted to make us feel like we really can trust, as you use the word. What I leave here with is thinking about the fact that your company is, I learned that you have personalized data advertising for kids as young as 13. And we've heard until Project Texas is supposedly stood up, engineers in China still have access to personal data. And that means engineers in China have access to personal data of 13-year-olds in the United States. And I think that really summarizes why you see so much bipartisan consensus and concern about your company. And I imagine that it's not going away anytime soon. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Yield to the lady from Arizona, Ms. Lesko, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Chu, do you agree that the Chinese government has persecuted the Uyghur population?
Congresswoman, if you use our app and you open it, you will find our users who give all sorts of content.
That's not my question. My question is, do you agree that the Chinese government has persecuted the Uyghur population?
Well, it's deeply concerning to hear about all accounts of human rights abuse. My role here is to explain what our platform does on this.
It's a pretty easy question. Do you agree that the Chinese government has persecuted the Uyghur population?
Congresswoman, I'm here to describe TikTok and what we do as a platform. And as a platform, we allow our users to freely express their views on this issue and any other issue that matters to them.
Well, you didn't answer the question. Earlier today, Chairman Rogers asked you, and I quote, "Have any moderation tools been used to remove content associated with the Uyghur genocide, yes or no?" Your answer, "We do not remove that kind of content." Yet, in 2019, TikTok suspended the account of Feroza Aziz, an American 17-year-old, after she put out a video about the Uyghur genocide. So your answer, sir, does not align with history.
That particular case was a mismoderation. I believe that video had a picture of Osama bin Laden, so we thought it was content that was inappropriate.
Yeah, I looked it up. That was a different post that they banned. TikTok
I can get back on the specifics, yes.
My next question. India banned the use of TikTok in their country in 2020. New Zealand has banned the installation of TikTok on devices connected to the country's parliamentary network. Canada banned the installation of TikTok on government devices. The United Kingdom has banned the TikTok app from government-owned devices. Belgium banned the TikTok from government phones. The European Union banned the installation of TikTok on government devices. All cited security risks with the company's data collection and connection to the Chinese Communist Party. Recently, our U.S. FBI Director Christopher Wray said about TikTok, quote, "This is a tool that is ultimately within the control of the Chinese government, and it To me, it screams out with national security concerns. Mr. Chu, how can all of these countries and our own FBI director have been wrong?
I think a lot of risks that are pointed out are hypothetical and theoretical risks. I have not seen any evidence. I'm, eagerly awaiting discussions where we can talk about evidence, and we then can address the concerns that are being raised.
Yes, my next question revolves around an article. India banned TikTok in 2020. A March 21st Forbes article revealed how troves of personal data of Indian citizens who once used TikTok remain widely accessible to employees at the company and its Beijing-based parent ByteDance. A current TikTok employee told Forbes that nearly anyone with basic access to company tools, including employees in China, can easily look up the closest contacts and other sensitive information about any user. This current TikTok employee also said, quote, "If you want to start a movement, if you want to divide people, if you want to do any of the operation to influence the public on the app, you can just use that information to target those groups." Why would Mr. Chu, why would a current TikTok employee say this if it wasn't true?
This is a recent article. I have asked my team to look into it. As far as I know, we have rigorous data access protocols. There's really no such thing where anybody can get access to tools.
All right.
So I disagree with a lot of the conclusions of that.
Madam Chair, I request unanimous consent that the Forbes March 21st, 2023 article be added to the record.
Without objection.
And I would like to turn over the rest of my time to Mr. Abernoldi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Chu, I'd like to continue asking the question that we ran out of time last time. So as part of Project Texas, you're going to have engineers at Oracle review the algorithms, the machine learning algorithms that TikTok uses to ensure that they're free from foreign influence. But as you and I were discussing, reviewing the algorithms doesn't do anything. The algorithms are simple. That's not where the secret sauce is. The secret sauce is in the data used to train them and the outcomes that you're asking them to predict. Would you agree with that?
No, I actually believe that with third-party monitoring, you can identify a lot of the motivation of the code. And with enough third-party expert, you can identify a lot of what the code is designed to do.
But how would you verify that you couldn't ask the algorithm for a different outcome than the one that the rest of the source code is asking for?
The algorithm will be trained, this gets very technical, but it will be trained based on weights, for example, and those are things that we can verify. What weights are you putting on likes?
If you could give us a written response to that, I'd appreciate it, because I'm interested. Thank you, Madam Chair. I yield back.
Lady yields back, gentleman, lady yields back. Chair recognizes for 5 minutes, gentleman from Florida, Mr. Soto.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The genie's really out of the bottle on this now, so to speak. 150 million Americans are now on TikTok. That's almost half of America. They're expressing themselves in art and music, poetry, short film, comedy, among other creative expressions, and many of them are inspiring, talented young people. But we also on the committee recognize there's a darker side to it, right? Violence, adult themes, drug and alcohol, sexualization, suicide, all major issues on TikTok, but also Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and other social media platforms. So the solution, as I see it, is to regulate TikTok and other social media platforms. And that job, Mr. Chu, as you know, really falls to us. There are real concerns, bipartisan common ground we've already had. We had a federal device ban that was voted on bipartisan in the omnibus. And I co-introduced a bill with my dear friend, Representative Kamek, about notices of that federal ban. Madam Chair, I think the first key is privacy. We have to pass the comprehensive legislation that got out of this community but eluded us in the last Congress. I'm really hoping we can get that done, and I'm really excited about hearing that from folks. The other thing is that TikTok needs to be an American company with American values and end its ties to the Chinese Communist Party. This is something that'll be critical as we look and go forward. And then 3, we all agree we have to protect our kids. The committee should consider banning the use for children under 13 of not just TikTok, but all social media platforms, or at least empower parents. In addition, have rules of the road for teens that are 13 to 17 so that families can do what's right for their families. So for privacy, that's on us. Internet privacy is on us. As far as being an American company, Mr. Chu, as you know, the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States at the Department of Treasury reviews foreign investment that affects national security. Right now, they've negotiated with your company about this Oracle setup that you've talked about, servers in an American company in America, in Texas, and then Oracle would monitor the algorithms. But pressure is mounting. So, Mr. Chu, would TikTok be prepared to divest from ByteDance and Chinese Communist Party ties if the Department of Treasury instructed you all to do so?
Congressman, I said in my opening statement, I think we need to address the problem of privacy. I agree with you. I don't think ownership is the issue here. With a lot of respect, American social companies don't have a good track record with data privacy and user security. I mean, look at Facebook and Cambridge Analytica, just one example. So I do think that, it is not about the ownership. It is a lot about making sure we have Project Texas, making sure that we're protecting and firewalling U.S. user data from unwanted foreign access, giving third parties to come in to have a look at this and making sure that everybody is comfortable. We're giving transparency and third-party monitoring, and that's what we're doing for Project Texas.
Well, I would at least encourage you all to start having the dialogue, should that be where the president and the Congress ends up going. The third thing is on parents. I had a constituent of mine, Brandy of Lake Nona, say, I'm a parent of two teenagers, 14 and 18 years old, both of whom have been harmed by social media. TikTok's algorithms supply my 14-year-old son with a continuous stream of inappropriate content and has negatively influenced his perception of all females. I noticed the attention span of both of my teens has changed or decreased dramatically, and social media has made my daughter insecure, leading to an eating disorder and ultimately depression. What safeguards do you have, and what should we tell Brandy of Lake Nona about how we can help her protect her children?
We have a differentiated experience. I mentioned just now about the experience if you're below 13, very, very restricted. If you're below 13 to 17, Congressman, we actually have a whole series of things. First, the content that you see, we make sure that we remove things that could be mature themes from your feed. We also, by default, do not allow under 16s to use direct messaging. We do not allow under 16s to, we set their accounts to private by default. They can go viral. If you're below 18, we shut off some features for you. Like, for example, you're not allowed to post live streams. Neither are you allowed to send virtual gifts. So we take this very seriously, and we want to continue to build to ensure that we're giving our under 18 teenagers on our platform. Although today they are only a minority of our user base today, but we still take it very seriously.
Mr. Chu, I'd encourage you to continue thinking about how to get the word out to parents across the nation on some of these tools, as well as we here craft a privacy law that will help provide well-needed regulation to social media companies across the nation. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Pence, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairwoman Rogers and Ranking Member Pallone, for holding this hearing. I love both of your opening remarks. Like my colleagues have discussed today, our increasingly digital world leaves Hoosiers and all Americans in the dark about who has access to their information. For TikTok users, that could be third-party data brokers, advertisers, or the Chinese Communist Party. TikTok aggressively feeds addictive content to users to glean massive amounts of personal data that's worth a fortune. For Hoosiers watching at home, this isn't just data about your favorite sports team. If there really are 150 million users in the U.S., this suggests to me that the CCP has a finger on the pulse of almost half our nation's population. I find that hard to believe. But this week, I decided I would ask my constituents in southern Indiana to share their stories with me. Went out Monday night, and we got 800 responses in less than 12 hours, okay? Let me share a couple of those with you. One of my constituents shared, I quote, "I'm a mental health counselor. Most of my teenage clients are on TikTok. They spend hours online being negatively influenced by others. I've seen kids experience self-harm, gender dysphoria, and many mental illnesses they have picked up from TikTok. I will not allow my children to have TikTok. The creators know the algorithms are addicting our children. They know that children are suffering more anxiety and depression from screen time, but they do not care. They will not change their algorithms because it's financially lucrative for them to keep their kids addicted. Another parent said, we let our daughter try it out. The feed was continuously suggesting sexually explicit, stupid, and vulgar videos. We discontinued it within a week. And there's been many more. Like I said, 800, okay? In your testimony, Mr. Chu, you walked through a number of supposed actions taken by your company to create a safe environment, empower parents to oversee content shown to their children. But virtually everything we've heard reflects the opposite, and some of your answers are a little confusing. You know, all of those sitting here and maybe watching on C-SPAN, this is the 32nd hearing we have held about privacy and big tech. Each hearing I've been part of, we've heard the same stories about our constituents' experience and the same promises for big tech to do better. The truth of the matter is this disgusting and dangerous content littered across your platform is not justifiable and it's uncontrollable. Americans' data is not safe, and big tech is doing nothing to protect it. Putting aside the dangers of the CCP involvement, and after these 32 hearings, I believe it's actually time to change the narrative, change the focus, and change the outcome by talking about the money you're making at TikTok. Mr. Chu, I have a question. How much revenue is generated per user?
Congressman, we
Private company, and you're not going to tell me.
Yes.
Does each user receive a comparable benefit for the amount of profit their data brings to your company?
We do share some revenue with some creators who produce, say, 1 minute plus informative content.
When am I going to get paid for the data that you are selling, or you're getting revenue from advertisers? When am I going to get paid for the data you're getting from my children, my grandchildren, my neighbors? I think that's the only way to get your attention, is talk about the money you're making, and maybe that'll get you all to do what you're supposed to do.
I respect and understand your opinion. The vast majority of our users have a great experience. I sent a video recently as well. I got hundreds of thousands of comments.
But what am I getting? It's a great experience. What about these 800 bad experiences that people in the Indiana 6th District have been getting?
We will look into them, and a lot of
You're going to look into it, but this is a 30-second big tech hearing, and you're always going to look at it. Frankly, I think you're all stalling is what you're doing. You're just trying to buy time while you're making the $18 billion, perhaps, whatever you're making.
The majority of our users have a great experience on our platform. It is our duty to keep it safe. I agree with you. That's why our commitment is to make sure that safety is a priority for us.
I think it's your duty to pay attention to what you're doing, and maybe you paying people for the information that you're getting from her is a way to get that done. Thank you. Yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes gentlelady from Washington, Ms. Schreier, for 5 minutes.
Thank you for being here, Mr. Chu. I'm really concerned about everything that we are hearing in this conversation today, and I appreciate your good intentions, but the actions are really falling short. As a pediatrician and the parent of a teenager, I'm particularly concerned about how social media generally, and TikTok specifically, is affecting our kids and teens. We just heard a lot about this from testimony from a psychologist. Last year, the American Academy of Pediatrics sounded the alarm about our children's mental health crisis. And as a pediatrician, I know this has been going on for more than a decade. In fact, it tracks perfectly with social media engagement. And during the pandemic, teens who are missing out on in-person interactions turned even more to social media to connect with friends. Social media is designed to be addicting. That's the business model. And your platform is the most addictive of all. And this endless, mindless scrolling takes teens away from human relationships. And here's what's important, it keeps teens awake all night, well past their bedtime, at a time in their lives when sleep is critical for brain and physical development. In fact, sleep deprivation alone, ignoring even content alone, can cause depression, anxiety, social withdrawal, inattention, poor coping skills, and academic failure. So, Mr. Chu, I just want to follow up a little bit on what my colleague, Mr. Sarbanes, was discussing. It is your business model to keep eyes on the app, to keep it addictive. I know you likely have experts who have advised you on how to design this to keep those eyes on your platform for the longest possible time. So I want to know if you have psychologists or other health experts on staff looking at screen time, hours of use, and sleep.
We worked with the Digital Wellness Lab, Congresswoman, and at the Boston Children's Hospital, and we came up with a 60-minute default limit for any users under 18. We were the first to do it in our industry.
That is an opt-out, and I can tell you, they're going to immediately opt out. It is addictive. It's
We
like
also give tools.
asking a chain smoker not to take the next cigarette. It is not going to happen. And by the way, so first I have a question, then I'll go back to Boston Children's. Mr. Sarbanes asked earlier, what is the percentage of teens who actually adhere to the 60-minute limit?
I would need to check on those numbers and get back to you on specifics.
I'd appreciate those numbers.
Yes.
I'm guessing it is an incredibly low percentage who actually heed that. Now, as far as Boston Children's goes, I know you're referring to them as a source for these ideas about go outside, get some air, take some time out. But I can tell you as a pediatrician, I'm guessing their suggestions were a little stronger than that. And so I'm wondering what is the next step? What are you doing when you find out that almost nobody is really opting out after 60 minutes to take this burden off of the kids and off of the parents and change your algorithms to make them not so hooked?
We give our parents, as you pointed out, the family pairing tool. And in that tool, if you pair it with your teenager's phone, you can actually set a restriction, how many minutes. And we believe it's very important for parents to have these conversations with their teenagers so to decide what's best for their family. I also, Congresswoman, a lot of people come to our platform to have a really informative experience. Like I said, there were 116 billion pieces of content on STEM. And we're creating a feed dedicated to that. Book Talk has 115 billion.
We've also heard today that well over 20% of the information is misinformation. We heard that about medical remedies that are not really remedies. We've heard it about mental health topics. I mean, this becomes very dangerous, especially when people who are not trained to think very critically are being given information and thinking that it's true. And you've said many times that the destructive information isn't available to kids, but it is. Like, we keep seeing examples here. And so I'm just wondering, what are you going to do with the algorithms? I mean, just because you're removing something that says anorexia, bulimia, or eating disorder, that doesn't do it. If you show girls repeatedly skinny bodies and advice on how to cook meals that are less than 300 calories, that's dangerous.
We have worked with, first of all, anything that glorifies eating disorders, we remove that from our platform. It's violative. We're working with experts now. It's a challenging problem for our industry. But we're actually identifying some of these themes that you're talking about and trying to build models where that kind of content is not chained up for the younger users. So it's something we take very seriously too.
We're seeing eating disorders in elementary age kids now, and I need you to expedite that process as much as possible because parents out there are worried, and I'm worried as a pediatrician. Parents can't take themselves off of these platforms. Kids, there's no way they're going to take themselves off, and we need you to do your part. It may affect your bottom line, but it could save this generation.
I share your concerns and I commit to doing more. Yeah.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Joyce.
Thank you, Chair Rogers and Ranking Member Pallone, for holding this hearing. According to an August 2022 article in the New York Times, TikTok's in-app web browser can track every individual keystroke made by a user. We have heard today about the various ways in which the app's code could be used to monitor or track users, and likewise, we've heard concerns that this data may not be fully isolated from access by the Chinese Communist Party. That said, I'd like to know more about the historical, non-public U.S. personal data that your company has already amassed Mr. Chu, you have publicly stated that the non-public information of TikTok users in the United States is being transferred to an Oracle-based cloud infrastructure because of safety concerns. Will that be completed by the end of this week, by the end of this month? What's the outline for dealing with that data that you've already amassed?
All new data is already stored by default in this Oracle Cloud infrastructure with the
No, I'm talking about the data that you've already amassed.
We are in the process of deleting.
What timeline will that data be able to be stored?
I believe we will be able to get it done this year. I'm hiring.
This year, thank you. It's not going to occur anytime soon. To be clear, until that data transfer happens, user data remains accessible to the Chinese Communist Party. On March 1st of this year, the committee asked you when you plan to delete non-public historical U.S. user data. Are you aware of this?
Congressman, I disagree with this assessment that the Chinese government can get access to the data. It's really for, look, this is a private company. This is what Chinese employees
You responded. You responded in writing to this committee. I have the response that we got back from you on March 7, just 6 days later. Your attorneys wrote, the company, I'm quoting, the company plans to begin the process of deleting non-public historic U.S. user data this month and anticipates that the process will be completed this year. You came up with a supposed plan in the summer of 2022, specifically based on our concerns that the Communist Chinese government was spying on U.S. users. But you only just came up with the idea to delete historic non-public U.S. data just 2 weeks ago? Let me read it again. On March 7th, your attorneys wrote, and I quote, the company plans to begin the process of deleting non-public historical U.S. data this month and anticipates that the process will be completed this year. Mr. Chu, did you just come up with this plan only because we asked about it on March 1st?
No, we started deleting this.
Well, because that's what it looks like to me.
We hired a third-party
Incredibly
auditor to help
disappointing.
us with this.
Wouldn't you agree that awaiting even minutes for this personal privacy protection is absolutely wrong and it is not in the best interest of your users?
Congressman, respectfully, there are many companies that use a global workforce. We are not the only one. We are just taking action after hearing
Given the
concerns.
delay in
Many other
deleting
companies
this
have
data
not.
and what we've already established about the ability of the Chinese Communist Party to access personal user data, would you agree that no U.S. government electronic devices should have access to TikTok platform as your lackluster security currently stands?
I disagree with that characterization. Like I said,
Do you think
the U.S.
that any individual should be utilizing that on any government platform?
I think the government devices shouldn't have no social media apps, to be honest, but
And particularly
not targeted to us.
TikTok. Mr. Chu, during this hearing, you have mentioned several times that there is a, quote, different experience, your words, for children under the age of 13.
That is correct.
Different experience. Mr. Chu, do you allow your children under the age of 13 to participate in TikTok? Yes or no?
I did just explain this in detail. This experience doesn't exist in Singapore where my children live. If my children lived here, then yes.
Based on what we've heard today, it's clear to me that TikTok as a company cannot be trusted and that Americans remain significantly at risk because of the TikTok app. I still contend that TikTok is the spy in Americans' pockets. I want to acknowledge that TikTok does have the ability to make those changes, but unfortunately, we have not heard that from you today. We have not heard a commitment to be able to protect the personal privacy that Americans expect and that Americans deserve. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I yield the remainder of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes Ms. Tran for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Chu, many big tech CEOs have sat where you're seated today and tried to run out the clock during a hearing like this one. They were trained not to answer questions and just wait for the news cycle to pass so that they could get on with business as usual. Those same executives want this moment, TikTok's moment under the microscope, to distract Congress and the American people from the very real issues that exist on their platforms. You have an opportunity to turn the tables on them. While US-based social media giants have regressed on protections for children and teens, on protecting our data privacy, and on embracing transparency, you can lead, and you should lead. Last month, you announced that TikTok would expand access to its researcher API, but I'm concerned that your new policy could be more bark than bite, that it won't actually lead to the rigorous research that we as lawmakers and that parents and everyday TikTok users need. In fact, your terms of service demand that researchers delete their data at TikTok's unilateral direction. It puts onerous restrictions on how researchers' findings can be published, and it only allows access to public data, which researchers already have access to within the app. In order to actually address the content moderation and algorithmic amplification concerns that my colleagues have raised here today, and that I've heard about directly from parents in my home state of Massachusetts, independent researchers, not just other tech companies like Oracle, need to be able to evaluate how TikTok's algorithm is making decisions to promote content. Mr. Chu, will you commit to expanding your API to include data that would let researchers investigate how your algorithm is pushing content to users, whether it's showing up on your For You page, the hashtag page, or somewhere else?
We are, one of the commitments I gave in the opening statement is a commitment to transparency and third-party monitoring. So, Congresswoman, I will look into the details of that and get back to you.
And as well as the algorithm, including data on what types of users were targeted by the algorithm so that researchers can fully understand what content is being prioritized and who it's being pushed to.
Again, we have a commitment to transparency. These are very important questions, and I will get back to you on the specifics.
Under this same proposal, you require that researchers give TikTok, quote, worldwide, free, non-exclusive, and perpetual, end quote, rights to their papers. This threatens to clash directly with well-established practices of exclusive publication rights in research journals. Mr. Chu, why does TikTok need those rights?
I would need to get back to you on that specifics, if that's okay.
Yes, I don't see how we can expect researchers to do their work under these terms and then tout transparency. I'm going to shift gears with the time that I have remaining, Mr. Chu. I'd like to talk about TikTok's efforts to protect children and young users. In 2021, the UK's Age-Appropriate Design Code went into effect, mandating 15 standards that companies like you need to follow to protect children on your platform. You still operate in the United Kingdom, which means you should be in compliance with this code. So my question is simple. Will you commit to extending the protections currently afforded children in the UK to the millions of kids and teens who use your app here in the United States?
We take the safety of the younger users on our platform very seriously.
It's a good way to prove it.
Every country is a little bit different in context, and let me look at the specifics and bring some of the best practices across the world. But
well, those best practices are they're being executed around the world. We just want the same for our kids here in the United States. I mean, Mr. Chu, when we spoke a couple of weeks ago, you indicated interest in taking steps to earn trust, our trust. And to me, it hasn't happened today so far. But rather, you've ducked behind industry standards and comparables to your competitors, which we know are woefully insufficient. I strongly urge you to consider these terms, these commitments, make the case for why you're different from your American competitors, and do better than them on transparency, which you've mentioned countless times today, but which we don't really have anything tangible to point to.
Yes, I don't want to make excuses for our industry or ourselves. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done. We take this very seriously. Nothing is not perfect. We need to keep investing to stay ahead of our growth. So I agree that we need to prioritize safety and continue to do that as part of our company. And
well, I look forward to getting back your comments and your commitments and those updated terms of service when you write back to the committee. Thank you, Madam Chair. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair recognizes the gentleman from North Dakota, Mr. Armstrong, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We've heard a lot today about the procedural safeguards, independent code review, server locations, and the corporate independence between ByteDance and the CCP. But I think there's something else a little more telling. You know, when you were asked about Chinese censorship, you pivoted immediately to drug use in Singapore. You have absolutely tied yourself in knots to avoid criticizing the CCP's treatment of the Uyghur population. And I think it begs the first question, before we ever get to Project Texas, which I'll get to in a section. If the CCP demanded that ByteDance hand over all of the data that they had on US users in their possession, and ByteDance refused, I wonder what would happen. I wonder if Jack Ma might have an opinion on that, and I wonder if he'd be allowed to give it. But let's talk about Project Texas for a second. Project Texas envisions a new US-based TikTok subsidiary. You have stated that this arrangement is unprecedented. I'd argue the reason it's unprecedented is because it requires continual oversight and monitoring by the US of a private business because it poses a national security threat. The new subsidiary's board would report to and be approved by CFIUS. CFIUS will also specify hiring requirements as well as interact with Oracle as it performs its data role. That is an extraordinary corporate governance structure. I have questions whether it complies with corporate law and fiduciary duty to shareholders. Yet the core concern is that the proposes unparalleled integration with the US government with a private company, which will require significant government resources. All of that to allow a continued operation of a social media platform that has serious national security implications. And CFIUS's workloads already dramatically increased in recent years, with a 30% increase in declarations and a 45% increase in joint voluntary notices. And there's bipartisan consensus that CFIUS needs to be expanded as we speak. Mr. Chu, can you identify a similar corporate arrangement that requires federal government to expand such resources to monitor an alleged data privacy and national security risk?
Congressman, I'm not an expert on this matter. I believe that there are certain similar arrangements, but I'm not the expert on this matter.
Well, the only one I could find was the UK created the Huawei Cybersecurity Evaluation Center in 2010 to assess Huawei's tech and to detect malicious activity and guard UK's networks. That's worked so well that the United Kingdom is now planning on kicking Huawei out of Great Britain. You stated that TikTok has invested $1.5 billion in Project Texas. Are you aware of any discussions or proposals that entail TikTok funding or offsetting the costs of CFIUS' role?
Those discussions are, I need to get back on the specifics, but I can tell you, yes, we did spend approximately $1.5 billion on our side.
You spent $1.5 billion on Project Texas. But do you have you agree that if CFIUS takes on this role, they're going to need a massive influx of dollars in human resources, right?
I cannot speak on behalf of CFIUS, Congressman.
Should the U.S. government expend such resources to create this extraordinary arrangement for TikTok, especially considering alleged data privacy and national security risks?
Congressman, I cannot speak on behalf of the United States.
Well, but Project Texas doesn't work without CFIUS, right? Project Texas, as you guys have proposed it, does not work without CFIUS involvement.
The idea behind Project Texas is the firewall of U.S. user data. Make sure it's stored by an American company, overseen by American personnel, and we will invite third-party monitors to monitor this. So that, in essence, at least as far as I know, is the majority of the cost, because it will rely on not just us building the infrastructure, but us, finding and hiring these third-party monitors who are vetted to come in and monitor this structure.
You talked earlier about the shareholders' ownership of TikTok, and you said 60% is global investors, 20% is employees, and 20% is original founders. Are all those voting shares the same?
No, the founder has weighted voting rights, as is common in our industry.
So as far as a voting block of shares owned in ByteDance, do you know if the Chinese Communist Party, not Chinese government Communist Party officials, the Chinese Communist Party, do you know what their percentage of the actual voting block share of ByteDance is?
The Chinese Communist Party doesn't have voting rights in ByteDance.
Chinese Communist Party members is a different question. Do the founders control the voting block of ByteDance's shares?
I do know that the founder himself is not a member of the Communist Party, but we don't know the political affiliation of our employees because that's not something we ask.
Does the Chinese government know the political affiliation of their Chinese citizens?
I cannot answer that question on their behalf.
I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Yield to the gentle lady from New Hampshire, Ms. Custer. 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. True, I just want to say I agree with all of the comments of many of my colleagues today that we need to take a close look at whether TikTok poses a national security risk. For today, I'm going to focus my limited time on how TikTok can better protect its youngest users. And I think a number of us have identified as parents today and have serious concerns as we relayed to you. Just this week, I heard from a parent in my district in Nashua, New Hampshire, whose child was served harmful content on TikTok and has needed counseling as a result. This experience is not unique to this family, and it underscores the need for better child protections on your app. I'd like to dig further into TikTok's current safety and privacy controls for children. I understand that TikTok restricts certain app capabilities for users under age 18 and has additional restrictions for users under age 16 or 13, such as limiting who can interact with them on the platform. However, these protections are worthless if any savvy child can easily bypass these age restrictions by deleting their own account and creating a new one with a different age. And by easily, I mean you can literally go in and open another account using the same email address. So I've been made aware by child safety groups, including Fair Play for Kids and Common Sense, that it is that simple for young users to bypass the age restrictions on TikTok. Yes or no, are you aware of this issue?
I apologize. I think that's a great question that you raised. If a user inputs an age and is blocked, my understanding is that if the user tries to do it again within a short period of time, and I won't disclose publicly.
We did it in our office yesterday. You can go right back in, use the exact same email address, and open a new account. So can I get your commitment that you will at least fix that bug?
I will go and have a look at it, yes.
Thank you. If we're here today to talk TikTok and not other platforms, but I'm happy to look at legislative solutions. In the interim, TikTok has a responsibility to do more to protect its young users, and I will accept your commitment to take a look at fixing that issue. Will you, let's see. Sorry, I recognize that TikTok has made efforts to provide parents and guardians increased options to monitor and limit their child's activity on the app, including family pairing and time limit features. But I still have concerns. In order to access family pairing, parents then must download the app onto their phone. And this sounds like a design to lure more users onto the app rather than a practical safety feature. Furthermore, downloading the app may not be a viable option for many parents. Mr. Chu, will TikTok commit to developing other methods for parents to monitor their child's use of the app without having to download the TikTok app on their phone?
I can look into that specifically and get back to you. But the family pairing that you mentioned is a very good tool that we developed. I encourage parents with teenagers to use it.
But it's not a perfect tool. And let me just say, one of my concerns is that the minimum time limit TikTok lets parents set for their children is 40 minutes, which for a young child is a very long period of time. Actually, giving parents control would mean providing them the freedom to set the screen time that makes sense for their family. Now, I've got a copy of the app page that shows just the 4 options. Would you commit to adding an other option so that the parent can easily set their own screen time limit?
I can take a look at that.
I think it's important. I think parents are looking for control. They're looking to allow their family to use these apps without TikTok taking over their child's media use. I've heard use reports, I've heard reports of users struggling to access the feature, and so I will look forward to hearing back from you on adding an other so that a parent can add a custom limit. So finally, I ask that you commit to report back to this committee and the American public on how TikTok addresses these safety issues and the steps that you are taking to default children's accounts to the most protective possible settings. And with that, Madam Chair, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair yields to the gentleman from Ohio. 5 minutes, Mr. Balderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chen, for being here today. I would like to start by inserting into the record a report entitled TikTok, ByteDance, and Their Ties to the Chinese Communist Party, which was published by the Australian Parliament just over a week ago. If I could add that to the record,
Without
please.
objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Chu, we know that your company's algorithm has been exposed for delivering videos to China that encourages them to develop eating disorders, promotes challenges that have caused children to accidentally commit suicide, glorifies the use of drugs and pornography. Despite the constant media coverage of this issue, your company continues to feed our children this dangerous and harmful content. Can you explain to parents back in my congressional district why it should be their burden and not TikTok's to set up the guardian parental controls for their children so that they do not view content which encourages eating disorders or committing suicide?
Congressman, I take these issues very seriously. If the user is a teenage user on our platform, we actually have a differentiated experience, including certain models that we are building with experts to help identify certain content that's not inherently harmful, but could lead people to eating disorders. Anything that glorifies eating disorders is violative of our platform, and we remove that. And I want to assure you that I take this very, very seriously, this commitment.
Okay. Mr. Curtis, my colleague, mentioned the use of heating tool on your platform to make specific videos go viral or get more views. Does TikTok use a cooling tool where employees can manually limit the amplification of content that TikTok should hide, like content that promotes eating disorders, drug use, or suicide among children?
The only promotion tool that we have is approved by the local teams, so in the US by the US team, and it's for commercial purposes like Taylor Swift. I think when she onboarded, we,
So
heated a little.
Yes or no?
I just want to make sure that I'm answering your question with specifics.
If this tool exists, why isn't it being used to cool then the spread of dangerous content? I mean, why is it still happening?
Dangerous content that violates, we remove them. When we see them, we actually remove them from the platform.
Okay. The fact of the matter here is that despite whatever action you take, that TikTok is taking to protect teens, your algorithm continues to promote harmful content. Wouldn't you agree that indicates there is something inherently wrong with the algorithm your platform employs?
I do respectfully disagree with that. The algorithm drives a great user experience for many, many users. I talked about STEM content. That has 116 billion views on our platform. I want one more example. Book Talk is a trend that happened on our platform. Is to encourage people to read. And globally, it has 115 billion views, and it's fantastic. I've heard people telling me that they are reading more because of Book Talk. So there is a lot of good and joy and positive that can be derived from the TikTok experience. Yes, there are some bad actors who come in and post violative content, and it's our job to remove them. But the overwhelming experience is a very positive one for our community.
But if it's your job to remove them, it's been said many times here today about the 41 days that video stood up with addressing the chairwoman.
After this, I'm going to go and look into the specifics of that.
All right, thank you. Madam Chair, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes the lady from Texas, Ms. Fletcher, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairwoman McMorris-Rogers, and thanks to Ranking Member Pallone for holding today's hearing, and thank you, Mr. Chu, for appearing today. It's been a long day, but we're here to learn about a complex set of issues that relate to TikTok and how to address them. And I think that's what we're hearing from colleagues on both sides of the aisle today, is a real effort to grapple with the challenges that we see for national security and for the safety and protection of American citizens. especially our children and young adults. And we've already covered today a lot of the information about the extensive use of the app, the number of users who are children and young adults. But I think it bears repeating, as Mr. VC mentioned, that TikTok is the preferred platform of young Americans. And they use it for all kinds of creative and important things. And we have seen that. But there are also some dangerous things that we know it has and continues to be used for. And that also that the data that's collected is posing additional dangers. And that's what we're here for. Most people using TikTok do not realize that TikTok is collecting data about their keystrokes or about their browsing history on other sites and so much more. And I agree with my colleagues that we need a comprehensive set of data privacy laws here in the country, and we've heard some very good ideas today. Mr. Chu, you've mentioned several times today that these are industry-wide issues, and I agree with you that there are industry-wide challenges here. But there are also some specific things relating to TikTok that I want to focus my questions on and really want to understand where there's a difference and how we can craft legislation that addresses the very real challenges that we've been hearing about today. As you know, states across the country have joined an ongoing investigation into possible violations of consumer protection laws by TikTok as they pertain to TikTok's effect on the mental health of American children and teenagers. As part of this investigation, states have requested to review internal TikTok communications that takes place on LARC. That's TikTok's primary instant messaging system. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And does every TikTok employee have a LARC account?
It is very similar to companies that use Slack or any other instant messaging tool.
But LARC is a proprietary instant messaging tool. It's not Slack.
It is something that was developed, yes, by ByteDance.
It was developed by TikTok?
No, it's developed by ByteDance.
It's developed by ByteDance. Okay. And so a couple questions stemming from that. Is it true that LARC video conferencing has a translation feature in which Chinese is translated to English text and vice versa?
That is correct. It helps with global cooperation. Okay.
And those translated conversations are somehow saved into the LARC system?
I will need to get back to you on the specifics.
Okay.
There is, I'll get back to you on the specifics.
Okay, that would be great to know. And I neglected to ask, but does every TikTok employee have a LARC account?
Yes, I believe so, yes.
Including you? Do you have one?
Yes, I believe so. Yes.
And then do you have there's some kind of profile for your instant messaging system. So every employee identifies their manager and their department, who they work for, what they do. Is that all included in their LARC profile? Do you know?
It's very common for companies to have enterprise messaging tools that companies use.
It does, and I guess I'm asking specifically about LARC since it's specific to TikTok, whether it includes information like identifying who, for example, your manager is. Do you know whether that's something that's identified in LARC?
Yes, again, some of these HR features are built into a lot of enterprise tools that we use, and yeah.
So like for your own profile, does it identify who your manager is?
Yes, it does.
And who does it identify as your manager?
I report to the CEO of ByteDance.
Okay, and so that is Zhang Yiming, is that identified as your manager? That's the former CEO.
He has stepped down from the board and as the CEO, yes.
Okay, so Mr. Rubo is identified now as your manager on
yes.
The system? Okay. And as you mentioned, it was developed by ByteDance, so it's not just used by TikTok employees, it's also used by ByteDance employees, is that right?
Also by other companies now. I think LARC is selling it, and it's a good tool for instant messaging.
So LARC is available to third parties outside of the ByteDance system as well, like
yes.
Slack? And do you personally ever use LARC to communicate with ByteDance?
With the employees at ByteDance? Yes, I do.
You do, okay. Well, I'm running out of time, and I'm sorry to say, because this is really interesting. I do think it underscores some of the concerns that have been raised in this hearing. So I think it's clear we have work we need to continue to do here in the Congress to address data protection and privacy. And with that, Madam Chairwoman, I thank you, and I will yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Committee stands in recess and will reconvene immediately following the third vote being called.
Catherine.